First launched in the US in 1993, the Food Network's path to success hasn't always been so easy. In fact, the foodie favorite has weathered quite a few scandals, and some of those shocking situations have rocked the network and its devoted fans to their very core. Here are some of the biggest scandals the Food Network has ever faced. Ina Garten's pass. Ina Garten, host of Food Network's Barefoot Contessa, revealed her not-so-nice side in 2011 when Enzo Pereda, a 6-year-old battling leukemia, requested to meet her through the Make-A-Wish program, and she denied him due to her busy schedule twice. His family wrote about the incident in a now-defunct blog, which then got the media's attention. Garten did damage control, inviting Pereda onto her show, but the Peredas passed on Garten's offer, saying that young Enzo would instead fulfill his wish of swimming with dolphins. Mario Batali's skimmed tips. Chef Mario Batali came under fire in 2010 when a class-action lawsuit was filed against him on behalf of some of his employees. The suit represented 117 people who worked for Batali in his restaurants, alleging that Batali illegally skimmed tips, keeping 4 to 5% of the money that should have gone to his servers. Batali finally agreed to a settlement in 2012, paying $5.25 million to the employees named in the lawsuit, and any of the employees who lost tips as a result of Batali's tip skimming from July 2004 to February 2012. But Batali was back in the news in 2017 when 4 women accused him of inappropriate touching. Batali didn't deny the allegations, which spanned 20 years. He said in a statement to Eater, "That behavior was wrong and there are no excuses. I take full responsibility and am deeply sorry for any pain, humiliation, or discomfort I have caused to my peers, employees, customers, friends, and family." Batali watered down a second apology in an emailed newsletter where he added a link to his pizza dough cinnamon rolls, which are now known online by a few other names, including apology rolls. Either way, Batali's career took a nosedive. ABC fired him as co-host of The Chew, and Food Network announced they would no longer be producing his show Molto Mario, which they had previously planned to revive. Anne Burrell's trash talk. In 2009, Chef Anne Burrell was sued for discriminating against female employees at Centro Vinoteca, a West Village restaurant where she was formerly a chef. According to the lawsuit, Burrell was accused of calling the all-female plaintiffs a string of derogatory names. She also reportedly made remarks about their cleavage and is said to have openly commented on their private lives. When the women complained, Burrell allegedly had them fired. Although an undisclosed settlement was reached in that case, Burrell has not commented on the validity of the accusations. Robert Irvine's fake resume. Chef Robert Irvine shot to fame as the host of Food Network's Dinner Impossible. His resume boasted a British knighthood, cooking for 4 former U.S. presidents, and a friendship with Prince Charles, as well as a hand in creating his wedding cake when he wed Princess Diana. But it all turned out to be too good to be true when it was revealed in 2008 that Irvine's resume was substantially padded. Irvine left Dinner Impossible in disgrace. The show continued to air with Michael Simon at the helm, but after Irvine apologized, Food Network eventually welcomed him back. Nigella Lawson's drug abuse. Chef Nigella Lawson's good girl image took a hit in 2013 when the multi-millionaire and her ex-husband, Charles Saatchi, accused their former assistants, Francesca and Elisabetta Grillo, of defrauding the couple of hundreds of thousands of pounds. The Grillo sisters contested the charges, claiming that they were allowed to spend the couple's funds by Lawson on the condition that they didn't reveal her drug use to Saatchi. The Grillos claimed that Lawson used cocaine daily and had abused prescription drugs for years. During the trial, Lawson told the court, "I have never been a drug addict. I've never been a habitual user. There are 2 times in my life when I have used cocaine." The Grillo sisters were acquitted of the charges. Guy Fieri's homophobic remarks. Guy Fieri came under scrutiny in 2011 when some incredibly offensive remarks of his were revealed to the press. According to David Page, the creator and former producer of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, one of the restaurants they visited for the show was run by 2 men who Fieri had determined were life partners. Page said Fieri called him and said, "You can't send me to talk to gay people without warning. Those people weird me out." Page added that from that time forward, producers were told to make a note if they picked up any, quote, indications of homosexuality during the pre-interview process. Reed Drummond's racist recipe. On the 2nd season of The Pioneer Woman, the show's star Reed Drummond made a racist joke that offended many of her viewers. On the show, Drummond made Asian hot wings for her family and friends, which were met with disgusted faces. Drummond then joked,
"I'm just kidding, guys. I wouldn't do that to you."
And replaced the hot wings with American buffalo wings. The blog Thick Dumpling Skin called Drummond and the Food Network out, writing, Why must we watch non-Asian cooks show us how to make our own dishes? And how come when they do, we have to watch as their entire family mocks it? Like in this episode of The Pioneer Woman. Eater called for Food Network to stop airing the episode in 2017. Paula Deen's racial slur. Scandal broke out in 2013 after Paula Deen admitted to having used the N-word. The racist language came to light as part of a lawsuit filed by a former employee of a restaurant co-owned by Deen. As her empire quickly turned to dust, she pleaded with fans and coworkers.
I beg for your forgiveness.
But Deen's apology might have been more convincing if her company hadn't released a statement claiming that Deen used the slur in a different era, attempting to justify Deen's language, saying, "She was born 60 years ago when America's South had schools that were segregated, different bathrooms, different restaurants, and Americans rode in different parts of the bus. This is not today." 5 years after her half-baked apology tour, Deen has returned to TV on a different network with her new cooking show, Positively Paula.
Some of the most popular Food Network shows have been canceled quite suddenly. What did Paula Deen say to get fired? What got Mario Batali blacklisted? Keep watching for the shocking answers. In 1993, Food Network executives noticed Emeril Lagasse's talent and flair and hired him as one of their original channel personalities. The chef and the network both struck gold with Emeril Live. The cooking show wowed audiences with its enthusiastic energy, receiving a Cable Ace Award in 1997, its first year. Featuring a live audience and band, the percussionist chef could often be seen swapping drumsticks for drumsticks during commercial breaks. Bam! Fans were hooked. But by 2004, ratings had fallen. Food Network president Brooke Johnson was ushering in a new wave of reality TV-style shows, and Lagasse's old-school style wasn't the best fit. Johnson tried to get Lagasse to change his ways, offering him a gig on the new show Iron Chef America, but ultimately the two clashed, leading to Lagasse's departure from the network. Emeril Live filmed its last Food Network show in 2007. Chef and restaurateur Mario Batali stepped onto the Food Network stage in 1996 as the dynamic, orange, Crocs-wearing chef of Molto Mario. Chef Batali had an applause-worthy knack for balancing the creation of robust and innovative Italian dishes while regaling viewers and guest diners with a cultural and culinary tour of Italy. Batali would receive James Beard Awards for Best Chef of New York City in 2002 and Outstanding Chef of the Year in 2005. But in the midst of his culinary success, Molto Mario fell apart. In 2004, the show was canceled, along with a number of other original Food Network programs. In 2008, Batali told New York Magazine, "The Food Network was tired of me and couldn't find a way to use my information." Still, he continued to appear on shows like Iron Chef America, and Food Network even contemplated reviving Molto Mario. But in 2017, following accusations against Batali of sexual misconduct by former female employees, that idea was dropped for good. A classically educated chef, Sarah Moulton founded the New York Women's Culinary Alliance in 1982, worked in various restaurants, trained in France, and ran the dining room at Gourmet magazine. She'd also solidified her behind-the-scenes TV presence, backing Julia Child on PBS, and working as food editor with Good Morning America. In 1996, Chef Moulton reluctantly agreed to host Cooking Live on Food Network. It was a hit, only ending in 2002 when Moulton launched Sarah's Secrets instead. For 4 years, the show educated viewers with busy lifestyles on quick and easy techniques and recipes, inviting celebrities and experts to join in. In 2004, Sarah's Secrets even got a shout-out in the liner notes of the Beastie Boys' 2004 album, To the Five Boroughs. But Moulton was also among the casualties when the original Food Network lineup was scrapped in favor of reality competitions. After Sarah's Secrets was canceled in 2006, she told Eater, "They dumped me. I was part of the old guard." In 1998, the same year he opened his first restaurant, Blue Ginger, chef, restaurateur, and cookbook author Ming Tsai debuted East Meets West on Food Network. For Ming, the concept of East meets West signified a harmonious balance of the two culinary approaches. In the show, Chef Tsai loved sharing this balance and teaching his audience new methods while stimulating their palate with global flavors. In 1998, he won an Emmy for Outstanding Service Show Host. But in 2003, as Food Network began rethinking its strategy, Chef Sy decided reality TV wasn't his cup of tea. In an interview with Good Food on Every Table, Sy stated that he left the network because, quote, Food Network became all about competition. Like Batali and Moulton, Sy ended up moving to PBS. One of Food Network's longest-standing stars, restaurateur, author, and chef Bobby Flay, made his way from the French Culinary Institute to celebrity chef status in 1996 as the host of Grillin' and Chillin'. Since then, he's appeared on a number of Food Network shows, including his hit series, Beat Bobby Flay. But they haven't all been winners. In 2013, Flay took home chefs from cities across the U.S. on a wild reality ride in Bobby's Dinner Battle. With limited budgets and time constraints, 3 teams in each city were to create the perfect 3-course dinner for Flay, the other competitors, and a special guest. Alas, the series only lasted 5 episodes. Chef Flay admitted in a 2013 article with My Recipes, quote, "I just don't think it was interesting." He said the show's concept didn't work, but also claims that it wasn't meant to be a multi-season show anyway, so technically it wasn't canceled. Ace of Cake star Duff Goldman made his debut on Food Network in 2005. The show highlighted the ins and outs of Goldman's confectionery business, Charm City Cakes. For 11 seasons, viewers got a taste of the bakery's operations, from the creation of fanciful cakes to Goldman's relationship with vendors and customers. The show proved to be a sweet success, but ended in 2011, much to the chagrin of its millions of viewers. So why did it end? Goldman essentially just felt like it was time for a change in his life. He moved to LA, opened Duff's Cake Mix, began filming a new show, Sugar High, and then worked alongside Valerie Bertinelli in Kids Baking Championship before taking a break. He finally returned in 2019 with Duff Takes the Cake, and in 2021 launched a Discovery Plus show called Duff's Happy Fun Bake Time. But he said Ace of Cakes is basically done, as it captured, quote, "a very special time and place that I'm just not sure we can ever really recreate." Everyone loves a good romance. Unfortunately, Down Home with the Neelys was not one. In 2008, Gina and Pat Neely, high school sweethearts and married for over 20 years, made up the alleged happy couple of the Food Network hit. Gina and Pat brought not only their grilling expertise and favorite dishes, but also a relaxing family-style vibe that viewers could relate to. But in 2014, behind the smiles and loving facade, Gina packed her bags and exited both husband Pat Neely and Food Network. It turned out that for the final 2 years of the show, the two were separated, and Gina had had enough. She told Oprah,
"I never wanted to do that show. I never wanted to live my life quite out loud like that."
In a People magazine interview, Gina revealed she had already planned a divorce before the show began and would cocoon herself before each episode. He was in the restaurant business. She was in banking. He loved being on the show. She didn't. Ultimately, the couple divorced. In 2000, chef and author Anthony Bourdain launched his best-selling book, Kitchen Confidential. Hearing his new travel book idea, NYU film graduate Lydia Tenalia made a call, and soon Bourdain was filming A Cook's Tour on Food Network. In 2002 and 2003, A Cook's Tour ran for 35 episodes and took viewers on a global, no-holds-barred culinary journey, from the beaches of the Caribbean to a Thailand jungle journey. But there was a big problem. The Food Network didn't want him to actually travel, as they felt ratings would improve if he focused on American cooking. That was counter to the whole concept, so Bourdain refused, and then rebelled. After the network rejected his idea for an episode with gastronomic forerunner Ferran Adrià, he filmed it anyway, and then pitched it to Travel Channel. They loved it, and in 2005 he jumped networks to create the award-winning show Anthony Bourdain, No Reservations. Before becoming a Food Network star, Paula Deen had a catering service, opened a restaurant with her 2 sons, aptly named The Lady and Sons, in downtown Savannah, and self-published 2 cookbooks. Then in 2002, Deen began her full-time career with Food Network on Paula's Home Cooking, which led to Paula's Party in 2006 and Paula's Best Dishes in 2008. For years, she was a hit. And then, things happened. In 2012, Dean revealed she had been battling diabetes for 3 years, which many felt was kind of important given that her food was renowned for celebrating unhealthy comfort food ingredients. But a much bigger problem came in 2013 when Dean admitted to using racial slurs. Along with many other sponsors, Food Network quickly announced that they were not going to renew her contract, and her time on the network came to a sudden and inglorious end.
If you've never committed a sin, please pick up that rock, pick up that boulder, and hit me as hard as you can.
Before reaching the Food Network shores, Chef Robert Irvine began his culinary career in the British Royal Navy. Not a novice to challenge, in 2007, Irvine accepted his new task on the network as the host of Dinner Impossible. Accompanied by a team of chef assistants, Irvine's assignment consisted of planning and executing extravagant dinners for large parties, often in remote locations. The mission included a restricted time limit, tools and ingredients, and occasional hiccups, such as altering the number of guests. However, in 2008, Food Network gave the chef a different mission: to explain why he had embellished a few notable experiences on his resume, like the fact that he hadn't actually cooked for several U.S. presidents. Technically, Dinner Impossible wasn't canceled, but Irvine was removed as host. He was replaced with Michael Simon. After apologies and explanations, though, Irvine was eventually reinstated as host of Dinner Impossible until its 8th season in 2010, after which it went off the air. He was also offered another show, Restaurant Impossible, which lasted until 2016. After a 3-year hiatus, Restaurant Impossible returned in 2019, and Dinner Impossible later returned as well in 2021. 2 years after a pilot for Alton Brown's show Good Eats aired on Chicago Public TV in 1997, it was picked up by Food Network. After it ended in 2012, the author, cook, and food science whiz went on to appear on Iron Chef America and The Next Iron Chef, and in 2013 scratched his competitive itch as host of Cutthroat Kitchen. Airing for 15 seasons, the wacky, trash-talking battle featured 4 competing cooks. Judged by celebrity chefs, their objective was to create the best dish and come out the winner, while fighting elimination during 3 rounds. Each contestant, initially given $25,000, also had ample opportunity through an auction process to bid on cunning ways to sabotage their opponents. The last person standing would keep their remaining bounty. After almost 200 episodes, Cutthroat Kitchen was chopped in 2017. Alton Brown had had enough of the game show lifestyle and wanted to do something else, like take a much-deserved break after doing these shows for so long. The break apparently reinvigorated Brown. Despite telling Larry King in 2014 that his classic show Good Eats would never return to the airwaves, it did indeed reappear in 2019. Restaurateur and celebrity chef Aaron Sanchez began his Food Network tenure on the long-forgotten show Melting Pot. Several years later, chef and restaurateur Chris Cosentino joined Sanchez as a competitor on The Next Iron Chef. The network apparently liked their vibe together because in 2009, the award-winning pals joined forces in Chefs vs. City. Hosted by Ethan Erickson, the reality competition followed Cosentino and Sanchez in a race against 2 local chefs in various U.S. cities to complete a series of tasks before reaching the finish line. Cosentino initially understood it to be a fun opportunity to combine travel, food, and competition, and promote his restaurant while hanging out with Sanchez. But the experience wasn't what he expected. During an impassioned Mad Symposium lecture in 2014, Cosentino revealed how terrible the show was for him. He said he hated the pilot, which he felt made him look like, quote, a bully. But he was contractually obligated to finish the show, despite the fact that the eating aspects of the show caused him such serious stomach issues that doctors thought he had cancer.
Nobody can take that away. Nobody can take away that moment in my life.
He revealed that he hated who he had become trying to chase fame on the network and left as soon as he could, despite the show's high ratings. While Aaron Sanchez remains a force on TV, Cosentino is happiest away from the cameras, cooking, mentoring new chefs, cycling, and authoring his own Marvel comic book. So next time you imagine how cool it would be to have your own Food Network show, remember what Cosentino says. Be careful what you wish for.
Alton Brown is a complicated guy. At the same time he presents food in a scientific, technical, and sometimes over-the-top, geeky sort of style, he also manages to do it in a way that's not just informative, but accessible. Here's what you might not know about Food Network's smartest showman.
You can't do this with a fork.
A difficult childhood. In 2016, the New York Times got the notoriously private Brown talking. Born in Los Angeles, Brown and his family moved to Georgia when he was 7.
As a kid, I was addicted to two things. And I'm talking kid like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Sure.
One, NASA, Apollo program, and then Jacques Cousteau.
But it was just a few years later that his father was found suffocated in their home. And while it was officially ruled that he took his own life, Brown believed his father's death was at the hands of someone else. Brown's mother went on to marry 4 more times. He isn't close with his step-siblings or his mother, and he added, "My mom didn't have a lot of respect for me until I became famous." The perfect recipe. According to the Bitter Southerner, Brown graduated high school at 16 and went on to direct TV commercials, where he got his first exposure to cooking shows. He remembered, "I was like, God, these are boring. I'm not really learning anything. I got a recipe, okay, but I don't know anything." So he sat down and came up with his own formula for a cooking show. He said, "I remember writing down one day, Julia Child, Mr. Wizard, Monty Python. Everybody thought I was insane."
I had had a really miserable time in school, and I just believed that if you can entertain people, you can infect them with knowledge.
The secret ingredient is... Brown makes smart look pretty effortless, but when he first started on Iron Chef America, he says he didn't know what half the ingredients were. He'd already been filming Good Eats for a few years, but he told the Bitter Southerner that when he got the call for Iron Chef, he was out of his element.
Today's secret ingredient is... mortadella!
Brown said, "I showed up to do that job. It's like, what the hell is any of this stuff? I'm like, I shop at Kroger, okay? You don't get 16 different kinds of freaking kelp at Kroger." Hammering out 2 episodes a day, Brown needed to learn so much so fast and talk about it on the fly that afterward, he said, "As soon as I was done using it, I flushed it." Controversial diet plan. As you might expect, Brown took a scientific approach to losing 50 pounds.
And so I actually made up this diet that was composed of 4 lists. And it was more about the foods I had to eat rather than the foods I wasn't allowed to eat.
But while he may have nailed his own meal plan, he wasn't so kind regarding other people's choices. In 2008, he told the East Bay Times that many overweight fans tell him they love Food Network, and he added, "Did you eat the TV? There's only 4 of you and you can't ride in an elevator together. I'll probably make fat people angry, but we need as a culture to be ashamed." Not surprisingly, he got some serious fallout for those comments. By 2015, he acknowledged it may be cheaper to feed a family on fast food and called the divide nutritional slavery, according to the New York Times. But he still went on to say, "Obesity is not a disease. The second that our society starts thinking that shoveling Big Macs into our face is a disease, then we're done. We're done as a culture." Trading blows with Bourdain. It was rare that the late Anthony Bourdain had anything good to say about his peers, and in 2015, he directed a pretty harsh blanket statement toward all of Food Network's personalities. He said while on tour, "I love Ina Garten. She's one of the few people on the Food Network who can actually cook." But when Brown talked to people, he didn't mince any words on how he felt, saying, "I don't have to defend my skills against anybody. When was the last time you saw Anthony Bourdain actually cook anything? I've spent 14 years cooking my own food on television, and I've never seen him cook a meal." After his comments, Bourdain apparently had a change of heart, tweeting, "I have zero beef with Alton Brown. Smartest stuff on Food Network and a hero to my daughter." Major multitasker. Think you've mastered the fine art of multitasking? Well, you've got nothing on Alton Brown. In 2010, he described to Eater just what goes on during Iron Chef America, and it's all about the hardcore multitasking.
This stuff just got real.
First, Brown's watching Relay from 8 different cameras. At the same time, he's got a laptop with an ingredient database in it, and he's also got an iPad that he's using to look stuff up. Meanwhile, he's got a culinary producer talking in his ear, relaying still more information, and while all that's going on, he's presenting. He said, "I can shut my mouth off from my brain. I can read one thing while I'm saying another. It is my only marketable skill." If it all sounds manic, don't worry, Brown's totally into it. He says, "It's a kick, it's a rush. Is there stress? Yes, but it's good stress. I dig that hour."
Actress and Food Network personality Valerie Bertinelli wants to be a person who is easy to relate to. She often shares cooking tips and recipes with her fans on her website in a bid to inspire them, as well as stories of her adventures with chefs, food travel, and more. She has written in the past that she hopes her website makes her feel like a, quote, trusted friend to her fans. However, the chef hasn't always been lucky in terms of meeting like-minded personalities and has a few unpleasant memories to share. On an episode of Bravo's Watch What Happens Live, she recalled meeting an extremely popular singer she greatly admired. Sadly, things didn't go well when they bumped into each other, and Bertinelli was thoroughly let down by the incident. For her, the encounter drastically changed her opinion of the famous singer. As she revealed for Watch What Happens Live host Andy Cohen, Valerie Bertinelli was psyched to meet singer Christina Aguilera at a concert that her ex-husband, Eddie Van Halen, played years ago.
And I went up to her because she was at a Van Halen concert. I said, "Oh my God, I think you're a beautiful singer, blah, blah, blah." And she just like went, "Yeah, whatever."
Bertinelli didn't feel too great about this interaction for obvious reasons. She struggled to figure out why Aguilera chose not to be kind to a fan. Interestingly, Bertinelli has mentioned the incident more than once in interviews. A couple of days after she spoke about it in 2014, Aguilera seemed to indirectly shoot back with her own response. Rather than commenting in a straightforward way, Aguilera put up a photo on Twitter of her recording equipment with a hat on top and wrote, "In more important news." However, this isn't the first time that someone has called out Aguilera for being rude. According to She Knows, several celebrities, such as Avril Lavigne and Mariah Carey, have noticed this behavior as well and mentioned it in interviews. Actor Daniel Franzese was particularly upset with the singer, which he further explained in an interview with Yahoo. "It's actually funny because I met Christina Aguilera and I thought for sure that would be an exciting moment in my life." According to Franzese, Aguilera dismissed him and walked away, despite his legendary rendition of her song Beautiful in Mean Girls. What makes Bertinelli's interaction with Christina Aguilera all the more disheartening is that the Food Network host is someone who truly values friendship. She has used her website's blog to share stories about the challenges of making meaningful connections later in life. Bertinelli also values long-term bonds in her own life. For example, she stayed close friends with rock legend Eddie Van Halen even after they divorced, and she once devoted an entire episode of her Food Network show to preparing a meal for 3 of her friends in celebration of their 20 years of friendship. Another quality that makes Bertinelli distinctive is that she's not afraid to talk about what's bothering her. Whether it's the fact that Christina Aguilera was rude to her, or that she's had to deal with online trolls who have mercilessly attacked her in the past, the TV personality has chosen to take everything in stride. She spoke up about the struggles she's faced online in an emotional Instagram video, explaining that strangers have been inconsiderate and have commented on her weight, thinking they might be trying to help her.
"You're not being helpful."
Other celebrities reached out in support, including the pioneer woman, Ree Drummond, who called her fellow Food Network star inspiring and encouraging. Singer Demi Lovato, who has dealt with her own trolls in the past, also posted in support of Bertinelli. She told the actress and host, quote, "You're already enough." Even singer and talk show host Kelly Clarkson, who stepped in to serve as a judge on The Voice in the years after Aguilera's departure, came to Bertinelli's defense on Twitter. Though Bertinelli has definitely had some unpleasant encounters with other celebrities in the past, there are clearly a lot of stars who are willing to come to her defense when she is struggling. That says something about the impact she's made throughout her years in the entertainment world.
Bam! It's impossible to describe just how influential Emeril Lagasse was in shaping today's culinary landscape. But in 2007, Food Network canceled the show that got so many people into the kitchen and helped launch the network. So why did Emeril Live really get the axe? When the cancellation of Emeril Live was announced, Food Network publicist Carrie Welch released a vague statement on the network's decision, saying, "The only reason the show would be canceled is that it hit a ton of television milestones and, all good things come to an end." Former Food Network president Brooke Johnson gave a similarly vague statement to the New York Times, saying that while they still valued Lagasse as an integral part of their team, all good things come to an end, and it was time to do something new. Of course, that wasn't the whole story.
Well, we won't go there. It's a long story. You want to really know?
The end of Emeril Live was quite a big deal. Since Food Network is huge today, it's easy to forget that way back in the olden days of the 1990s, it was struggling to even stay afloat. Alan Salkin's book From Scratch, Inside the Food Network, gives us a pretty unblinking look at just how far they've come, largely thanks to Emeril Live, which was launched in 1997. In the early days, it wasn't so much the Food Network as it was the Emeril Network. He held the nightly 8 p.m. time slot, and at a time when the young network was barely squeaking by, it was Lagasse they flaunted to prove that they had the chops to make it. Salkin describes him as their $1 million man in chef's whites, the star they pointed to when they wanted to impress. His contract in those early days was a 3-year deal, for which he was paid $333,334 each year. While that might not sound like much in comparison to what some celebrities are paid today, Food Network lauded it as a $1 million deal. The Food Network was essentially built on Lagasse's shoulders. Though network execs were boasting about their average primetime viewership of 778,000, they weren't talking about their flagging daily ratings, which were down to 544,000 from the previous year's 580,000. The numbers lost was significant. Food Network was suddenly left owing refunds to advertisers who weren't reaching the viewership they'd signed on for. We all know slumping numbers is a very real indication that something at a network needs to change, and that meant rethinking just what kind of programming they were putting on. Emeril Live became yesterday's news, while contemporary viewers wanted more. While Emeril Live was going up in flames, cable TV was beginning to lean into reality competition shows. Food Network's head of marketing reached out to Emeril's agent to try to get the chef on an up-and-coming show that would help expose him to new viewers and hopefully lure those viewers over to Emeril Live. That up-and-coming show was Iron Chef, and Emeril was having none of it. In a 2016 interview with GQ, the celebrity chef explained why reality TV just isn't his thing, saying, "I'm old-fashioned, and I want to teach people how to cook, how to eat, how to serve, how to shop, how to drink wine, how to mix a cocktail properly. I didn't necessarily at the time want to get into this competition stuff." Like many Food Network stars today, Lagasse had a full range of merchandise, including everything from cookbooks and cookware to salad dressings and spices. But when Food Network negotiated his contract, they hadn't accounted for the money the popular chef was going to make selling his branded goods.
Bam! Just like that.
According to the New York Times, Food Network's policy began to shift a bit in 2006. The network wanted more control over the licensing agreements their stars made. So when they started signing newcomers like Bobby Flay and Rachel Ray, they worked it into their contracts that chef-branded product lines would be as much about the network as they were about the chef. Lagasse's contract had no such rider, which meant Food Network wasn't making the same kind of money off his outside ventures. And as the network became more of a brand, there simply wasn't any room for Lagasse to continue to receive special treatment. Emeril Live was one of the network's flagship shows, and Lagasse was arguably their biggest star. But with his star power came a hefty price tag, and that meant the still-fledgling network had to make some difficult decisions. According to Alan Salkin's book From Scratch Inside the Food Network, it was costing hundreds of thousands of dollars a week to keep Emeril Live on air, and those big paychecks were hitting the network where it hurt. On the other hand, each episode of Flay and Ray's respective shows cost an average of just $40,000 at the time, a price which included their salary. Food Network had a choice to make: either support 1 week of Emeril Live with their budget, or produce an entire 13-episode season of a show featuring up-and-coming young talent within the industry. You don't need a business degree to figure out why they chose the latter. It's been more than a decade since the cancellation of Emeril Live, and since then, Lagasse has gone on to do a number of other shows. The celebrity chef told GQ, "When it ended, everybody felt like it was time for a little break. I didn't necessarily think that, but that's what everybody else thought. That maybe it was time for a break from Emeril. And, so I went and did some other things."
'Cause men belong in the kitchen.
There's no denying that Emeril Live helped make Food Network into the juggernaut of programming it is today. But does Lagasse think they helped him in any way? It's doubtful. Lagasse dished to Eater, "The Food Network is not why I have 12 restaurants. It all started at Emeril's on Chop."
The Food Network has been on the air for more than 2 decades, churning out drool-worthy dishes for the home cooking masses and launching the careers of dozens of celebrity chefs in the process. Behind all the recipes and star-studded kitchens, you might be surprised to learn some strange facts about everyone's favorite food channel. Your beloved cooking shows might not be exactly what they seem, and what goes on behind the scenes might not be what you'd expect.
Don't worry about it.
Hot tamales indeed. In 1997, hosts of Two Hot Tamales walked viewers through a traditional Latin recipe when things suddenly got a little too hot. Inexplicably, the feed switched to several seconds of an adult film before the screen went blank, and although an engineer attempted to switch to a backup feed, that tape also contained salacious material. The X-rated footage aired for a solid minute before returning to the regularly scheduled programming. The hosts released a statement saying, "We were stunned and dismayed. We have a broad viewing audience that we really care about, and we hate to think of the shock or embarrassment this may have caused any of our viewers. It was never discovered who switched the feed." That's gross. When you're in the comfort of your own kitchen, you might sneak a taste of the sauce and reuse the spoon or stick your finger into the frosting. But when you're on television, that's not a good look. And a study by Texas Tech University proved just how unsanitary your favorite Food Network personalities can be. The study looked at 17 food safety and handling habits in an analysis of 49 episodes of 5 different shows. They identified only 118 positive food safety measures compared to an overwhelming 460 poor food handling incidents. Paula Deen's show, Paula's Home Cooking, won the award for the most negative behaviors, thanks in large part due to one bad habit. The Southern chef licked her fingers more than 20 times during the analysis. Not exactly a squeaky clean performance.
It's just tongue titillating.
A little help. Think the celeb chefs featured on your favourite cooking shows are doing all the work themselves? Think again. Rob Bleifer, the executive chef of the Food Network kitchen, revealed, "People don't realise how many hands are involved even before the on-air chefs touch the food." It's in the 5 kitchens at the Food Network studios where all the ingredients are prepped, partially completed dishes are made to swap out during segments, and every detail of every show is organised. But it isn't like the on-screen chefs aren't working hard. Of Cooking on TV, executive culinary producer Jill Novat said, "You need to really actually cook while listening to the culinary producer whispering in your ear telling you to smile and to move your hand because it's blocking the celery, all while you also have to pay attention to the studio director on the floor who is pointing to which camera you have to face." Not so real reality shows. Watching chefs compete on television can be downright nerve-wracking. The surprise ingredients? Hamburger! The drama, the mishaps. Perhaps unsurprisingly, these shows blur the line when it comes to certain aspects of reality. According to an ABC News report, Iron Chefs are actually selected in advance, and 2 of the 3 chefs lurking in the dark are just stand-ins. And competitors are given 3 possibilities for the secret ingredient ahead of time, which allows the show to stock their pantries accordingly. As for all that cattiness between contestants, one Redditor who says they filmed an episode of a pastry competition show says it's all in the editing, revealing, "They sit you down to interview you and don't let you go until they get something they can edit to sound badly." Another Redditor who says they worked as an intern on a Food Network reality show says you can also blame editing for the seemingly rushed finish, sharing, "You can always have the countdown put over footage of a contestant making the final touches, even if those final touches were done 5 minutes before time was up." And a culinary assistant on Cupcake Wars claims those inexplicable mishaps were intentional sabotages, alleging that if the oven wasn't hot enough, it was actually due to a cameraman purposely turning it down. How's that for reality?
I am beyond freaking out.
The Triple D effect. For all of the criticism Guy Fieri receives, his show Diners, Drive-Ins and Dives has quite the positive impact on the restaurants featured. Restaurant owner Griffin Buffkin told Thrillist, "Fieri told us to be ready for a 200% increase in business. Believe it or not, that's what happened. And it really hasn't stopped ever since." From taping to airing, there's about a 6-month lag, but once it hits big. And because the network reruns shows, the restaurants experience regular upswings in business. Another featured owner, Sarah Sane, explained, "We can always tell the day after our episode has been rerun. Like, all of a sudden, we'll be slammed on some random Tuesday, then we'll realise, oh, they just replayed our show. That makes sense." That's unsurprising, given the people who seem to really love Fieri in the show. According to Alan Sorkin's tell-all book From Scratch Inside the Food Network, billionaire hedge fund manager Stephen A. Cohen forked over a boatload of cold hard cash to pal around Connecticut with Fieri for the day, playing out his fantasy episode of Diners, Drive-Ins and Dives.
This is ridiculous.
Office drama. Believe it or not, some of the biggest criticism of Food Network stars comes from other Food Network personalities. For example, it turns out Martha Stewart is a bit threatened by her competitors. Or at least that's the way she's portrayed with respect to barefoot Contessa Ina Garten in Alan Sorkin's book, which alleges Stewart changed her mind after producing a pilot for Garten. The book reports, Stewart was unhappy that another woman was going to be the star of a show produced by her company. What's more, the book alleges she went so far as to destroy all evidence the pilot happened. Stewart reportedly told her team, "I don't want to be representing Ina. I don't want this shown. I want the tapes of this whole series destroyed."
In 2006, a new TV star named Duff emerged from the Food Network. But a decade after his hit show's cancellation, fans are still wondering what happened to everyone's favourite cake baking series. Now, we're dishing on why Ace of Cakes went off the air.
Who wants cake?
According to The Hollywood Reporter, it was officially game over for Ace of Cakes in 2010. Duff Goldman, series star and owner of Charm City Cakes in Baltimore, Maryland, left a statement on his company's website confirming the news.
So you gotta just deal with it.
Goldman revealed that the series had finished production on what would ultimately be the final season of Ace of Cakes. With season 10 of the series in the can, the finale brought the total episode count to 116. Now, that's a lot of hours of behind-the-scenes activities at a small cake bakery, so many concluded that Ace of Cakes may have simply run its course. The cast and crew also produced a huge amount of content in a relatively short time, given that Ace of Cakes baked up more than 100 episodes over the span of just 5 years. In the early 2000s, Food Network found a level of popularity it had never seen before. It began downplaying its traditional lineup of cooking shows in favour of brand new reality programming. Reality shows told sitcom or soap-style stories, but crafted them around characters who also happened to be real people. Food Network stars quickly became bona fide TV celebrities, and one of the network's biggest breakout personalities was Duff Goldman. He was an easygoing, self-deprecating, remarkably talented pastry chef. And once his show became a hit, the network was eager to let the newly minted star stretch his creative muscles for their brand. Upon confirming the cancellation of Ace of Cakes to The Hollywood Reporter, Food Network general manager Bob Tushman claimed that it wasn't all over for Goldman. Indeed, over the next few years, the Cake Master would be all over the network, both as a producer and as an on-air personality. In addition to appearances on The Best Thing I Ever Made and LA Sugar, Goldman hosted Cake Masters, Duff Till Dawn, and Sugar High, and served as a judge on Donut Showdown and Kids Cook-Off. In 2010, right around the time that Food Network formally cancelled Ace of Cake, the NBC sitcom 30 Rock featured an exchange in which Liz Lemon debated the smartest thing she's ever said.
What about 3 years ago when I said there should be more TV shows about cake?
The joke poked fun at cake-loving Liz Lemon, but also at the TV cake show fad. Around that time, viewers had their pick of a bevy of frosted options. There was Ace of Cakes, Cake Boss, Fabulous Cakes, Sweet Genius, Cupcake Wars, and Ultimate Cake Off, and that's just to name a few. That's major content saturation around one subject. And as is typical with a trending topic, it eventually began to wear out its welcome. And when audiences tune out, it's the end of the line for a former craze. This is how it happened with Cake TV, as the cake baking fad faded away. Late 2010 was thus a natural time for Ace of Cakes to end. After showing off his amazing baking chops over dozens of episodes of his series, Duff Goldman became very famous. As an expert on all things cake, he became an in-demand figure in the worlds of food and food business by 2010. And all of his side ventures took up the time and energy that otherwise would have been devoted to Ace of Cakes. That is, at least while it was on the air. Few things are more time-consuming than expanding a business, and Charm City Cakes was booming. According to the Baltimore Sun, Goldman put in the effort to meet the demand by opening new branches of his flagship bakery. In 2011, Charm City Cakes West launched in Los Angeles, and 6 years later, he added a second Baltimore outlet.
Let's get a glitter cannon, right, and put it in its butt.
That's going to be a real special effect.
He also partnered with Gartner Studios to launch his own line of baking gear called the Duff Goldman Collection. The chef also expanded his empire into ice cream, according to Eater. He appeared on the packaging for Blue Bunny cake-inspired flavors, including Chocolate Lover's Triple Chocolate Cake, I Do Wedding Cake, and Red Carpet Red Velvet. One of the same reasons why Ace of Cakes ended also speaks to why a reboot is probably not in the cards. By the time the series debuted in 2006, Charm City Cakes had only been around for 4 years, and by all accounts, Goldman was a newbie to the biz, as were most of his employees and colleagues. And their fly-by-night attitude and charming lack of experience are what made the show so special. Goldman told MASH in 2021, "The thing about Ace of Cakes was, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I'd never worked in a cake shop before, so everything we were doing on that show, we were just making it up."
It's a cake shop. Should be fun, you know?
All told, Ace of Cakes was a show about people figuring out how to operate a business at every level. And after 10 seasons, Goldman & Company had made Charm City Cakes one of the top bakeries in the country. But this era of success wouldn't make for a show nearly as interesting as those early seasons of Ace of Cakes. Goldman explained, "It was a very special time and place that I'm just not sure we can ever really recreate."
We still rock.
Between Paula Deen's scandals and its lackluster representation of any culture outside the Midwest and perhaps Italy, the Food Network has seen its share of criticism. However, there's so much more going on behind the scenes than you might think. This segment from Sandra Lee's cooking show Semi-Homemade Cooking really takes the cake when it comes to poor taste. Lee is known for her trademark culinary philosophy that combines fresh ingredients with store-bought items. Anything but festive, her infamous Kwanzaa cake is made from a disturbing combination of store-bought cake, frosting, canned pie filling, and corn nuts. Not only does the cake sound unappetizing, but the recipe is also made up. To make matters worse, the host is definitely unfamiliar with real Kwanzaa traditions. Salon reported food stylist and recipe writer Denise Vivaldo disavowed the cake. Vivaldo claimed to have been pressured to produce the recipe for Lee's show out of financial need. Unsurprisingly, the segment received widespread criticism. AV Club aptly described it as a pile of ridiculousness slathered in despair and sprinkled with nonsense nuggets. In this case, Lee's offensive cake has no cultural relevance and doesn't seem like a recipe that would be welcome at any holiday table. The Food Network is known to capitalize on a good thing. Some might argue there's a bit too much of a good thing when it comes to Guy Fieri. Making his first appearance as a Food Network host on Guy's Big Bite in 2006, Fieri's best known for hosting diners, drive-ins, and dives. In addition to day-long Triple D marathons, Fieri's overexposure extends to at least 6 other Food Network shows. Along with diners, drive-ins, and dives, and Guy's Big Bite, the mayor of Flavortown can be found on Guy's Grocery Games, Rachel vs. Guy Celebrity Cook-Off, Rachel vs. Guy Kids Cook-Off, and Food Network Star. Despite Food Network's abundance of Guy Fieri, the channel kept quiet when a former producer alleged that Fieri made homophobic comments about a restaurant owner. According to the New York Post, former Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives producer David Page had a falling out with Fieri and was fired. Page sued Food Network for breach of contract, but the network countersued and said Page mistreated the staff in emails. The two settled out of court, and Fieri's show survived to see another diner with a new producer. One complaint about the Food Network's programming is that over the years, it's shifted its focus to pop culture and guilty pleasure recipes. The network has always featured personalities, but culinary tastes went beyond the diner in the earliest days. In the Food Network's infancy, trained chefs such as Sarah Moulton taught viewers the difference between leafy greens like kale and chard. In the early 2000s, the network realized most people watched for entertainment rather than instruction. Shows pivoted to showing fewer chefs, bigger personalities, and more desserts. Food Network executives even pulled the plug on one of its first stars when it canceled Emeril Live. Hosted by chef Emeril Lagasse, the show debuted in 1997 with a live band, studio audience, and Emeril's catchphrase, "Bam."
Just a little bam, 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 bam.
Among Emeril's many guests were the late Queen of Soul Aretha Franklin and cooking icon Julia Child. The formerly chef-driven channel is now packed with comfort food shows and competition heavyweights. The Food Network might be criticized for making competitions instead of chefs the main focus on TV, but the shift eventually worked in terms of ratings. As recently as 2020, the network has been criticized for its lack of diversity. Some note that women are more often eliminated in competition shows like Chopped. Wired found on-camera talent to be vastly white, with few people of color hosting on the network's cooking app. However, Food Network has since updated the app to showcase more diverse talent. Regular network programming also remains mostly white. Until 2017, Food Network featured relatively few people of color. Some of the first to break through were Ming Tsai, Sonny Anderson, the Neelys, Aaron McCargo Jr., Artie Sequeira, and Marcella Valladolid. By 2019, the network further expanded its diversity with Delicious Miss Brown's Cartier Brown and Girl Meets Farm's Molly Ye. Not featuring a variety of cultures is definitely a missed opportunity. On-screen diversity will hopefully continue on all of Food Network's platforms. Overall, cooking shows on Food Network are very Eurocentric. Shows featuring Western European cooking, such as the Italian cuisine of fan favorite Giada De Laurentiis, make up a disproportionately large portion of the network's programming. Not only are there few shows featuring people of color, the hosts often aren't professional chefs. Food Network tends to limit shows featuring people of color to natural or soul food cooking, focusing on comfort rather than technique. The book, African Americans on Television, explains this setup isn't necessarily an issue until we examine the history of people of color, especially Black people, as domestic labor. It's problematic to have people of color perceived only as approachable home cooks instead of culinary experts like other chefs on the network. Then consider the fact that these soul food shows present chefs of color cooking for a largely white, middle-class audience, and the situation gets even murkier. Food website Eaters speculated that the Food Network's 2010 push to appeal to more young male viewers might have been the wrong move. The culinary-focused outlet reported that including more reality TV and primetime programming resulted in a glut of copycat shows. The network ultimately canceled the show Chefs vs. City, a food-based Amazing Race clone, after just 2 seasons. The unintended consequence of programming changes might have added to a perfect storm when combined with lackluster new shows. As reported by Huffington Post, the programming shift led to the network's key demographics, women ages 18 to 49 and 25 to 54, switching to other channels. Viewers moved to other networks where reality and cooking shows such as Cake Boss and Top Chef reigned supreme. It should also be pointed out how the network's then parent company, Scripps Networks Interactive, launched the cooking channel the same year it acquired Travel Channel. The added internal network competition may have further damaged Food Network's ratings at the time. Chef Robert Irvine rose to fame on Food Network thanks to his no-nonsense persona as host of Dinner Impossible. In 2008, Irvine gained exposure of a different kind when questions about his culinary credentials arose in the media. Among the fabrications in Irvine's CV, revealed by the BBC, were a knighthood, ownership of a Scottish castle, a friendship with Prince Charles, and claims the chef had cooked for 4 United States presidents. The Food Network dismissed Irvine from Dinner Impossible and replaced him with Michael Simon. Audiences didn't connect with Simon, and somehow Irvine got his job back. While Food Network brass may not have cared much about credentials, the show's writers and producers weren't so forgiving. Irvine's new missions on Dinner Impossible set him up for failure. Reportedly, Irvine would show up on set to find inadequate materials available to complete the show's challenges. Sometimes lying to your coworkers really doesn't work out so well.
Oh man, you're like making my life a misery today.
Turns out the Food Network has a history of bad fact-checking. Joshua Adam Garcia, aka Chef Jag, became a fan and judge's favorite on Food Network star thanks to his unlikely background story. Jag claimed to have graduated from the New York Restaurant School and joined the Marines, where he served in a war zone. There, he reached the rank of corporal. His resume turned out to be so unlikely because it was fake. The show revealed the betrayal on network television and shocked the audience when the finalist was asked to step down before the final vote. The real background of the disgraced chef is much less decorated. Jag never graduated from the New York Restaurant School and never served in a war zone or rose to the rank of corporal. In reality, he'd been demoted due to a Marines hazing scandal, and his military career was cut short. Food Network forced Jag to withdraw from the competition show, but his memory lives on as an iconic moment of television. Southern cooking personality Paula Deen is no stranger to controversy. What's a bit more unusual is for scandal to strike her son, Bobby Deen. That changed when Paula's team posted a photo of mother and son dressed as Lucy and Ricky from I Love Lucy, complete with Bobby sporting offensive brown face makeup. Obviously, it wasn't a good look, and a backlash quickly ensued. To make matters worse, only 2 years earlier, Paula had apologized for racial slurs in a 2013 lawsuit brought on by a former employee. The photo was eventually deleted, and Paula Deen announced the social media representative responsible was fired for the incident. That still doesn't explain how anyone thought the brown face makeup was a good idea in the first place. And while not necessarily offensive, it's also a bit weird for a mother and son to dress up as a married couple. Regardless of the social media criticism, the incident didn't harm Bobby's standing with the Food Network. Today, Bobby's show Not My Mama's Meals airs on the Food Network's sister network, The Cooking Channel. Bobby Deen has also hosted several seasons of the Food Network's Holiday Baking Championship and Spring Baking Championship. In the early days of the Food Network, UK transplant Jamie Oliver hosted the fully clothed culinary show The Naked Chef. With his relaxed and laid-back approach to food, Oliver became a household name. His popularity eventually led to his own line of cooking products. However, one Jamie Oliver item went over the line. Oliver released a product called Punchy Jerk Rice, supposedly flavored and inspired by traditional Jamaican cooking. You might be asking, what's jerk rice? Good question. There's no such thing, and that made Jamaican chefs understandably angry. A jerk is a spice rub made of allspice and Scotch bonnet peppers. Traditionally, the rub is used for chicken or pork that is then barbecued. Jamaican-born Levi Roots, a chef who actually taught Oliver how to cook jerk style, called him out for the appropriation of Jamaican culture, adding that it, quote, needs to stop. Aside from the recipe itself, the real outrage about the rice centered around the tendency to borrow from other ethnic groups without regard for knowledge of the culture. As a culinary figure, Oliver should have known better. He attempted to brush off the criticism, saying he only meant to acknowledge the flavor's inspiration. Oliver might think twice before borrowing cultural traditions for his next sales pitch.
Flipping the bird on TV? Fighting for a pan? Bullying on Chopped Champions tournament? These are just a few of the awkward moments you're about to watch. Food Network Star is a show about trying to be the next big TV food celebrity. And part of being famous is keeping your cool around other famous people and not acting like a fangirl. Not every contestant is up to that task, as this moment from the episode titled Room Service Revenge in Season 12 shows. The contestants were asked to cook tableside for Jesse Tyler Ferguson from Modern Family and Hannah Hart from My Drunk Kitchen. The challenge was supposed to imitate a sophisticated room service spectacle, but Tyler Ferguson's star power proved overwhelming for two of the cooks. First, Monterey plated her refined sea bass dish almost completely silently. When Bobby Flay asked her to tell the judges what she was doing, she snapped back saying, quote, "Be patient." The judges were stunned. The best part of the whole segment was Jesse Tyler Ferguson's look of slack-jawed shock. Monterey returned to play a supporting role in the next awkward moment as she toasted nuts during Anna's presentation, where Anna kept on calling her Nut Girl. The judges tried to laugh it off, but everyone involved looked deeply uncomfortable. Chopped is a pressure cooker environment with high stakes, and sometimes tensions between the chefs can boil over. In the Season 3 episode Judge Knows Best, the competition came down to Joe Tobias and Joshua Wiggum, battling it out in the dessert round. Although Joe had outcooked Joshua in both previous rounds, he failed to get his cakes on the plate before time ran out. Judge Mark Murphy asked Joshua if he would let the judges sample Joe's cakes from the pan he had been cooking them in, but Joshua refused. This clearly infuriated Joe, as he burst out that he had blown Joshua out of the water in the first 2 rounds. Fortunately for Joe, the garnishes he plated contained all the secret basket ingredients, and the judges enjoyed his flavors despite his disastrous presentation. After trying to play hardball, Joshua still lost the competition. He attempted to seem gracious in defeat and congratulated his opponent, but it was obvious the outcome left him seething. A good rule of thumb in life is to never pick a fight with somebody bigger and stronger than you. In Season 21 of Chopped, fearless grandmother Elda Belansky threw caution to the wind and tussled with the much larger Keith Young over who would get to use a grill pan to cook their ribeye steaks. The scene devolved into a playground tug-of-war, with the burlier Keith pulling Elda all over the chop set. Elda responded with her own dirty tricks, trying to bend Keith's fingers to get him to release the pan. Realizing that Elda was not giving up and that it looked bad for him to push around an elderly woman, Keith eventually relented and let her have the grill. Yet he seems to have had the last laugh. Keith and Elda both made it to the dessert round, whereas cake and ice cream bested her pastry. Still, their fight was definitely one for the books. There have been many angry business owners in Restaurant Impossible, but they don't normally try to shut the show down. That's why it was so shocking in Season 5 when Nancy Dupree tried to kick host Robert Irvine and his whole crew out of a restaurant, Nanny Goat's Cafe and Feed Bin. It had become apparent to Irvine that Nancy's daughter Jessica was to blame for most of this Kilgore, Texas restaurant struggles. Yet, Nancy couldn't handle the harsh truth and completely melted down in the middle of filming, shrieking at the top of her voice for everyone to leave. And boy, was it awkward. The worst moment in the whole incident was when Nancy screamed at her mother to, quote, shut everything down, while her mom tried to calmly talk sense into her. After she had cooled down a bit, Nancy allowed filming to continue, and the episode concluded successfully. Irvine's intervention helped save the restaurant. When Food Network checked in on the business the next year, it was thriving under a new set of owners. Michelle Caram was one of the biggest personalities on the next Food Network star season 11. Her bold Mediterranean flavors and on-camera charisma took her deep into that season's competition. In episode 3, she made the judges' jaws drop by intentionally subverting her normal mom persona with something a little more sultry. In that episode, Michelle and 4 other female contestants were asked to create a slimy dish. They came up with a spinach soup with grilled octopus tentacles, wowing Judge Bobby Flay with their creativity and execution. The 5 ladies decided to emphasize the slimy aspects of their dish by jokingly flirting with the judges while they explained their dish. Michelle leaned into her lusty character, asking Judge Jeffrey Zakarian to join her on a romantic yacht trip. Jeffrey was a little flustered by the attention, but Michelle moved on to many more episodes. She shocked the judges again later in the season by quitting the competition to rejoin her family at home. Maniaci's Italian Bistro in Mountain, Pennsylvania, dealt with tragedy before calling in the Restaurant Impossible team. Brothers Tim, John, and Jeff Maniaci struggled to run the restaurant after their mother's death. They poured their own money into the struggling restaurant to keep it afloat. They called in the Restaurant Impossible crew in season 5 as a last-ditch effort to save their business. Robert Irvine agreed with the restaurant staff that the bistro suffered from a lack of clear leadership. Irvine singled out Tim for being the most deluded, confronting him with customer complaints about the restaurant's house dressing. Tim, fresh from a drinking session in the dining room, asked the whole restaurant whether anyone enjoyed the salad dressing. Not a single person raised their hand. Even Tim's wife told him that she hated the dressing and that he needed to be less stubborn and to listen more. After that wake-up call, Irvine was able to introduce some improved organizational structures and better recipes to the restaurant, but it was apparently too late to save the business. Food Network gossip reports that the Maniaci brothers shut their restaurant down the year after that episode was filmed. This whole list could be composed entirely of Danushka moments from her 3-episode stint on Season 9 of Food Network Star. She announced her vibe right from the beginning, introducing herself in the first episode saying, "I'm Danushka, and I want to be a Food Network star," or something like that. She stuck to the same charmless attitude throughout her run, leaving her competitors and the judges flustered. She regularly insulted her fellow Food Network star hopefuls, making fun of Lovely's name, mocking the way Damaris talked, and accusing Nikki of being boring. Speaking of boring, Danushka claimed to be bored while competing in a chop-style challenge, leaving Judge Alex Guarnaschelli speechless. If we have to pick the most awkward interaction from Danushka's brief reign of terror on the show, it has to be when she, quote, jokingly said she would take off her shirt to get an advantage in a challenge. It's safe to say her joke does not land with the judges, and you can feel their secondhand embarrassment radiating from the screen. Viet Pham is an accomplished chef and finalist for the James Beard Award, and so he emerged victorious from his Iron Chef America battle with Bobby Flay. His head is filled with an encyclopedic knowledge of food, but throughout Season 9 of Food Network Star, he was often unable to communicate his expertise in front of a camera. His impeccable food skills couldn't make up for his wooden, awkward performance on video. He was booted from the competition after a particularly bad showing in the 4th of July Live Challenge episode of Food Network Star. The challenge in this episode was a live cooking demonstration that featured calling questions from viewers. Viet simply couldn't figure out how to juggle everything at once. A viewer asked him a simple question about appetizers, and Viet went blank. In fact, he did not answer the question at all, and remained quiet for the rest of his live appearance. It did not make for compelling TV, and it was so clear to him and everybody else on set that he was not going to be the next Food Network star. Sometimes chefs on Chopped seem angry to be competing, almost as if they didn't know what they were signing up for when they auditioned. The queen of this kind of whining has to be Rory Phillipson, who complained her way through the entirety of Season 15's Viewers' Choice Baskets episode.
I hate you, viewers.
To be fair to Phillipson, Chopped fans tend to let their inner sadist loose when they have an opportunity to choose ingredients. In the entree round, the chefs had to contend with a gnarly-looking canned whole chicken. Phillipson was able to prepare a perfectly edible-looking plate of food, but she unleashed her frustration on the judges when they tried to critique her dish. When Jeffrey Zakarian mentioned that her steak was under-seasoned, Phillipson began arguing with him, saying that she had marinated the steak at the beginning of the round so his complaints were invalid. The most teeth-grinding part of her showdown with the judges was when Scott Conant said that the entree was a lot better than the appetizer. Phillipson thanked him, assuming he was complimenting her cooking. Conant snapped back that he was talking about the basket ingredients, not her food. All she could do in response was to mumble wordlessly. The dessert round of the first episode of the inaugural Chopped Champions tournament was a shootout between culinary instructor James Gillespie and restaurateur Wade Birch. The two chefs could not have been more different, with Birch projecting calm while Gillespie flailed all over the kitchen. Gillespie spent the entire dessert round talking smack to Birch, attempting to put him off his game. The trash talking ended up costing one of the chefs the competition, and it wasn't Birch. Gillespie ended up distracting himself way more, burning his sweet potato tarts. The judges were not pleased with his tart pastry, and were further annoyed that Gillespie had let his fondness for schoolyard put-downs overshadow his mission to cook delicious food. Alex Guarnaschelli served up the knockout punch, saying, "I only talk trash when I know my stuff is perfect." Gillespie responded that his trash talk was more like innocent banter, to which Guarnaschelli responded by saying, quote, "Just cook your food." Gillespie was forced to swallow his pride and congratulate Birch on his victory. When you talk the talk, you need to be able to walk the walk.
Cooking under a strict time limit while TV cameras capture your every mistake has to be difficult. Throw in some ridiculous kitchen sabotages, and the challenge becomes even more intense. But what else would a show called Cutthroat Kitchen be? Here's what you may not have known about the show. At the beginning of each episode of Cutthroat Kitchen, host Alton Brown would walk out with a metal briefcase and open it to reveal $100,000 worth of crisp bills. The contestants' eyes would light up as he handed them each $25,000 to use for bidding on tortuous scenarios for their fellow competitors. But here's the thing, that cash was completely fake. Whether it's Cutthroat Kitchen, Let's Make a Deal, or a big-budget Hollywood crime drama, studios rarely use real money on camera. There's simply too much liability when using real cash, so instead, studios use prop money. Studios take great care to ensure that the prop money doesn't look completely fake on camera, but still adheres to strict U.S. counterfeit laws. Even though the cash in the briefcase was fake, the excitement from contestants who won the actual cash prize was very genuine. Cutthroat Kitchen didn't have much in common with Good Eats, the show that launched Brown's Food Network career. But the show did have something in common with another Alton Brown vehicle, The Next Iron Chef. In a few of the Next Iron Chef episodes, the competitors participated in a series of challenges where certain ingredients would be auctioned off based on how quickly a chef claimed they could cook them. Brown said that the scenes proved to be incredibly fun for both the chefs and the audience, and this led to discussions of how the auctioning concept could be expanded on its own. The host added, "My thing was, the judges shouldn't know what's going on because then everyone's judged on a level playing field, and that makes the game more fun." Of course, what Brown might consider fun, Cutthroat Kitchen contestants probably considered downright evil. When it came to just what went into food prep, judges really didn't know what was going on. It wouldn't be much fun if the judges knew a chef had to make a chicken marsala while wearing Mickey Mouse gloves, so they were kept in the dark about what sabotages unfolded during the cooking portion. Cutthroat judge Simon Majumdar said, "I am locked away, and I can tell you that they are really strict about that. I go and hide away in my very comfortable trailer, but the guys in makeup don't tell me a thing." The judges do eventually find out just what sort of kitchen torture the competitors went through after the tasting. For the truly dedicated Cutthroat viewer, there was an after-show web series where Alton Brown walked the judges through the various sabotages that resulted in both the winning and losing dishes from the contestants.
A whole canned chicken.
Oh! Sometimes the judges themselves even tried their hand at cooking with the sabotages in place. Majumdar added, "I just hope that they keep it to a level where the chefs can still cook, because otherwise, apart from anything else, I still have to eat the stuff." There seemed to be no limit to the mayhem that chefs inflicted on each other in Cutthroat Kitchen. Sabotages ranged from something as simple as having to use really burnt bacon to obstacles as weird as having to work at a constantly moving hula station. But they all had to be possible. Brown explained, "Not only do we test them multiple times to make sure they're doable, but we actually test them in tandem with other sabotages that we might put in the same round. We would like for people to be able to survive 2 sabotages." Brown said the Cutthroat team often worked for weeks before a show taping to put challenges into practice. It wasn't uncommon for sabotages to be so ridiculous that they had to be cut. Brown said that around 20% of the sabotages pitched ended up being just too over the top or tricky to pull off, so they never made it to the show. Some cooking shows pay all their contestants, while others only pay the final winner. Cutthroat Kitchen was one of the shows where the victor and only the victor took all the spoils. Cutthroat veteran Joe Arvin, who appeared on one of the show's Thanksgiving-themed episodes, said, "We were not paid to be on the show as a competitor. However, all travel and expenses were absorbed by the network." Arvin didn't win his episode, but noted that doing the show was still worth his time. The media exposure had its benefits. He said, "Probably more than anything, I learned to adapt to being on a studio set and in front of the camera. And it's called Cutthroat Kitchen. You didn't expect them to give money to everybody, did you?" Arvin said that he was contacted by the show's producers after they stumbled upon his cooking channel on YouTube. He explained, "They initially wanted to know how strong of a competitor I was and if I thought that I would be able to handle the pressure of competing on a show like Cutthroat Kitchen." It was apparently pretty common for the show's producers to reach out to potential contestants through YouTube or various other social media platforms. Once a chef said they were interested in appearing on the show, they would send in a resume along with a few photographs of their best dishes. From there, contestants would have Skype calls with the show's producers to discuss their culinary background. Arvin said his audition process took around 4 months, and oddly enough, there was never any actual cooking as part of the process. It would honestly seem a little out of place for contestants on a show with the format and title of Cutthroat Kitchen to be buddy-buddy with one another. Competitor interaction on Cutthroat wasn't scripted, but producers definitely tried to nudge the chefs in a certain direction. Contestant Joe Arvin said, "There is not any planned drama per se, but the producers highly encouraged the competitors to bash each other."
That looks like a TV dinner, bro.
The show even had a lawyer on deck to help ensure things never got too heated and that each episode had a balance of real-world versus the Hollywood-produced experience. Shows like Top Chef and Mind of a Chef have been lauded with praise by critics, but Cutthroat Kitchen never garnered similar accolades. At best, it was called intriguing by an Entertainment Weekly critic. But that same critic also discussed the difficulty of watching it and keeping one's, quote, faith in humanity intact.
Good luck. Yeah.
The AV Club's review wasn't much kinder, questioning whether Alton Brown possibly had a twin brother without any sense of shame, saying that the entertaining thing about the challenges were, quote, the fleeting glimpses of improvisational thinking. Why so much critical hate for a show that turned the standard cooking competition on its head? Plenty of TV cooking competitions have competitors trying to prepare a dish within a time limit using, at times, out-of-the-ordinary ingredients. Cutthroat Kitchen took the premise one step further and injected an element of comedy. The competitors were serious, but the show never took itself too seriously. Perhaps Cutthroat was just too lowbrow for foodies. As one review from Vulture pointed out, the real stars of the show weren't necessarily the chefs. What made Cutthroat Kitchen work were the writers, who episode after episode found a way to take the standard cooking competition and combine it with circus-like absurdity. In 2015, Cutthroat Kitchen got its own spin-off with Camp Cutthroat, a version of the show that took chefs out of the studio and put them out in a secret location in the wilderness. Rather than bring aboard cutthroat newbies, the spin-off series brought in previous competitors and upped the prize money by putting $75,000 on the line. As for that secret location, well, as viewers noticed pretty quickly, it wasn't exactly uncharted TV territory. Camp Cutthroat was filmed in Santa Clarita, California, on the set of a defunct Fox reality TV show called Utopia, with just a few cosmetic updates. Utopia was described as having elements of the reality show Big Brother, but proved to be far less popular and only lasted 13 episodes. As for Camp Cutthroat, well, perhaps it was too extreme, because camp ended for good a year later. The writers of Cutthroat showcased their devilish creativity with each episode, and occasionally turned the reins over to the fans when it came to coming up with new sabotages. Because what fan of Cutthroat wouldn't want the chance to make the chefs sweat a little? The show's website offered this invitation. Food Network is currently accepting submissions for upcoming challenges, and it's up to you, Cutthroat fans, to decide what disruptions future contestants will have to adapt. Who knows how many fan submissions actually made it onto the show, but there were certainly some creative ones thrown out there. One fan suggested strapping a competitor to a Silence of the Lambs-style dolly. Another suggested hiding the clock, with only the highest bidder being able to see how much cooking time was left. It's pretty obvious that there was definitely some strategy, besides just being handy with a skillet, to walking away with the cash on Cutthroat Kitchen. One of the biggest pitfalls that way too many chefs fell victim to was bidding too much money in the first round. Judge Simon Majumdar explained, while this may help them survive in the short term, their overspending will often come back and bite them in the backside during the latter stages. On more than one occasion, I have seen the better chef lose because they had insufficient funds to counter their opponent's bidding in the final round and were sabotaged to defeat. Poor shopping habits can also really do a chef in before the bidding or cooking even begins. If a chef is making a cheesecake and forgets cream cheese and sugar, they're going to have an uphill battle. Alton Brown said, "The number one sabotage is the sabotage the chefs do to themselves in the pantry. There's also a high probability that chefs will lose at least some of their ingredients in the sabotages." So Brown added, "Finding alternate acceptable approaches to dishes is always a really good idea." Cutthroat Kitchen had a solid run on TV, and over the course of 4 years, churned out 192 episodes of culinary mayhem. The show still regularly airs and is available on various streaming platforms, but Food Network officially pulled the plug on new episodes in 2017. Cutthroat viewers got the bad news from Alton Brown himself when a fan asked the host on Twitter if there were any new episodes in the works. Brown kept it short and sweet, telling the fan that Cutthroat Kitchen had been canceled, adding a hashtag that indicated it was probably his fault. As to why the show was canceled, it's likely that Brown simply wanted to do something else.